There was nothing on the hidden camera, until someone noticed a detail that wasn't there before, and now no one can unsee it. They almost ignored the call. It came in like hundreds of others that night, buried beneath routine noise, background static, and the low, steady rhythm of a system built to filter urgency from confusion. Nothing about it raised alarms at first. No screaming, no crashing sounds, no breathless panic, just silence. And then a voice. Quiet, uncertain, almost like it wasn't sure it was supposed to be heard. The dispatcher on duty, Hale, nearly missed it while finishing another report. The line had already connected. No alert tone, no escalation tag, just an open channel, faint breathing, and then a question. "You didn't see it?" Hale paused, not because of what was said, but how it was said. There was no fear in the voice, no rush, no desperation. It didn't sound like someone asking for help. It sounded like someone asking for confirmation, like the caller assumed something had already happened. Hale leaned forward, adjusting the headset slightly. 911, can you repeat that?" A brief crackle answered, the kind of distortion that usually meant a bad connection, or distance, but underneath it the breathing continued, slow, controlled, too controlled. "You didn't see it?" the voice repeated. Same tone, same calm uncertainty. Hale's fingers hovered over the keyboard now. This was where calls usually clarified themselves, where confusion turned into urgency, or dropped into nothing. "Sir, what didn't we see?" Hale asked, keeping the tone neutral. Professional. There was a pause, not the kind filled with hesitation. The kind filled with listening. As if the caller wasn't thinking of an answer, as if they were waiting for something else. In the background, there was a faint sound. Hard to place, not movement exactly, not static either. Something softer, like fabric shifting, or something brushing lightly against a surface. Then the voice returned. Quieter now. "You're not supposed to miss it." Hale frowned slightly. "Miss what, sir? What's your location?" Nothing. The line stayed open, but the voice didn't respond. Instead, there was a shift in the audio. A subtle change. The breathing stopped. And for just a second, there was something else. A second presence. Not a voice, but something close enough to one that Hale instinctively straightened. A faint, almost inaudible sound layered beneath the silence, like someone trying not to speak. Hale tapped the console, marking the call as active concern. "Sir, I need you to respond. Are you in danger?" Still nothing. Then, a sharp burst of static, and the line went dead. No disconnect tone, no hang-up signal, just absence. Hale stared at the screen for a moment longer than usual. Calls like that happened. Misdials, pranks, people saying strange things with no follow-up. It didn't fit any clear category, but it also didn't trigger any immediate protocol. So it was logged, non-actionable, incomplete communication, caller unresponsive, time of call recorded, audio stored, end of report. Or at least, it should have been. Because less than 20 minutes later, without a follow-up call, without a traceable number, without any additional report coming in, a dispatch request was generated, automatically. Unit 14, welfare check. Residential property. No listed occupants, no reporting party, no explanation. Hale didn't file it, didn't authorize it, and when questioned later, couldn't remember initiating it at all. But the system showed it clearly. Time-stamped, confirmed, sent, and already accepted by officers en route. At the time, no one questioned it, because the system didn't make mistakes like that. At least, it wasn't supposed to. When Officers Reyes and Patel pulled up to the address, nothing stood out. No flickering lights, no open windows, no movement behind the curtains, just a house that looked still, not abandoned, not damaged, not disturbed, just still, in a way that felt intentional. The kind of stillness that doesn't invite attention, but quietly resists it. The street around it carried on like normal. A car passed 2 houses down. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and then stopped. A porch light across the road flickered faintly, reacting to nothing in particular. But the house in front of them didn't react at all. Reyes stepped out first, closing the patrol car door with a soft, controlled push. Patel followed, glancing briefly at the structure as if expecting something to shift once they were both looking at it. Nothing did. "Dispatch said welfare check?" Patel asked, keeping his voice low. Reyes nodded. "No caller ID. No follow-up." Patel gave a small, uncertain exhale. "That's helpful." They approached the front door together, boots landing softly against the concrete path. Even their footsteps felt dampened here, like the sound didn't carry as far as it should. Reyes reached the door first. He paused, not out of fear, out of instinct. Something small, but wrong. The door wasn't fully closed, not visibly open, but not sealed either. Just slightly misaligned in the frame, enough that the latch hadn't caught properly. Reyes tested the handle, unlocked. They exchanged a quick look. That was enough. Reyes knocked twice, firm, professional. "Police, welfare check." The sound landed against the wood and didn't echo back the way it should have. Instead, it felt like it was absorbed, pulled inward. No response. He knocked again. "Police, announce yourself." Still nothing. No footsteps approaching, no voice from inside, no shift in the air. Just that same unnatural stillness. Reyes pushed the door open, slowly, carefully. The hinges didn't creak. The door didn't resist. It just opened, quietly, smoothly, like it had been waiting to. Inside, darkness stretched across the floor in long, unmoving shapes. The only light came from behind them, spilling into the entryway and stopping just short of the living room. Reyes stepped in first. "Police! Anyone inside?" Patel followed, the door left slightly open behind them. Their voices carried forward, but didn't come back. No echo, no bounce, no soft reflection off the walls. Just gone. Patel noticed it first. He didn't say anything immediately, but his head tilted slightly, listening. Reyes moved forward another step, then another. Inside, everything looked exactly how it should. A living room arranged neatly, couch aligned with a low table. No dust patterns suggesting long-term abandonment, no overturned furniture, no scattered belongings, nothing disturbed, nothing missing, nothing out of place. And that was the problem. Because a house that's truly empty doesn't usually look maintained. This one did. Perfectly. Like it had been prepared. Patel walked slowly along the edge of the room, scanning the corners, the ceiling, the hallway ahead. "Feels staged," he muttered. Reyes didn't respond, but his pace slowed. Ahead, a hallway stretched deeper into the house. No lights. No visible doors at first glance, just a dark corridor that seemed longer than the exterior of the house should have allowed. Reyes lifted his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 14. We're inside. Conducting sweep." A brief pause. Static. Then acknowledgement. He lowered the radio slightly. "Interior looks clear," he added, almost out of routine. But even as he said it, something about the statement felt premature. They hadn't checked every room, hadn't cleared the hallway, hadn't verified anything beyond the immediate space. And yet, it already felt clear, too clear, like the house wasn't hiding anything, like it had nothing to hide. Patel turned slightly, looking back toward the open door. The light from outside hadn't moved, hadn't shifted, hadn't dimmed. It just stayed, unchanging. "Reyes," Patel said quietly. Reyes glanced over. Patel hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing. Reyes nodded once, but neither of them moved for a few seconds longer than necessary. Then Reyes keyed his radio again. "Interior's clear." It should have ended there. It should have been a routine entry, a quick confirmation, a report filed, a call closed. But something about the way the house held their voices, the way it absorbed sound, the way it presented itself as normal without feeling normal. That moment didn't settle. It lingered, unresolved, and neither officer realized yet. They had already stepped past the point where things could still be explained. They almost missed it. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't disguised. It wasn't even out of place enough to immediately stand out. That's why it worked. Patel saw it first, but only because he wasn't looking for it. His eyes were moving across the room, scanning in that slow, methodical pattern trained into him over years. Corners, doorways, surfaces, back again, and then they paused. Reyes. Reyes turned slightly, following Patel's line of sight. At first there was nothing, just a shelf against the far wall. A few ordinary objects, books, a small decorative piece, something that looked like a clock. Then, there it was, small, compact, positioned at a slight angle, a camera. Reyes stepped closer. Each step felt louder than it should. "That camera always there?" Patel asked, though he already knew the answer. Reyes didn't respond immediately. He leaned in slightly, examining. The lens was pointed directly toward the hallway, not the door, not the living space. The hallway, as if that was the most important place to watch. Reyes reached out but stopped just short of touching it. There was a faint sound, so quiet it barely registered. A soft, mechanical hum. Patel noticed it too. "It's on." Reyes's eyes shifted to the small indicator light. Steady, unblinking, recording. That was the first thing that didn't fit. Not the emptiness of the house, not the silence, not the unlocked door. Those could all be explained, but this meant intent. Someone had placed it there, someone had turned it on. And someone, at some point, had expected it to capture something. Reyes straightened slowly. "Dispatch," he said into the radio, voice lower now, more focused. "Be advised, we've got an active recording device inside the residence." Static answered first. Then, "Copy. Any occupants?" Reyes glanced at Patel, then back at the camera. "No occupants found." A pause. "But something's been here." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. Patel shifted slightly, looking toward the hallway again. It hadn't changed. Still dark, still empty, still stretching further than it should. But now, it felt different. Not because of what they saw, but because of what they knew. The camera wasn't facing them. It wasn't watching the entrance. It wasn't recording who came in. It was recording what came out, or what moved through that hallway. Patel exhaled slowly. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Reyes didn't answer. He stepped slightly to the side, adjusting his angle. Following the exact line of sight the camera had been fixed on. The hallway filled his view, still nothing, still empty. But now, it didn't feel like an empty space. It felt like a monitored one, like something had already passed through it, like something might again. Reyes lowered his voice. "Check if it's storing locally." Patel moved closer, carefully inspecting the device without disturbing its position. "There's a memory unit," he said after a second. "Still running." Reyes nodded once. Then, whatever it recorded, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to, because both of them understood the implication at the same time. If the house was empty, if no one was inside, if no one had responded, then the footage shouldn't contain anything at all. And yet, the camera was still on, still recording, still aimed at a place where nothing was happening, which meant one of two things. Either it had already captured something, or it was waiting to. Patel glanced at Reyes again. "We should probably review that." Reyes didn't move, didn't blink, didn't take his eyes off the hallway. "Yeah," he said quietly. We should. But neither of them reached for the camera. Not yet. Because something about it, something subtle but unmistakable, suggested that the moment they looked at the footage, things would stop being theoretical and start becoming real. They reviewed the footage the same way they reviewed everything else, methodically, rationally, expecting nothing. Because at that point, nothing is exactly what made sense. The device was removed, logged, and transferred to evidence processing within the hour. No urgency tag, no escalation priority. Just another piece of collected material tied to a welfare check that hadn't produced anything unusual. At least, not officially. The first viewing happened in a controlled room. 2 investigators, 1 screen, no assumptions. The file opened without issue. Timestamp active, camera stable. And exactly what you'd expect filled the screen. The living room, still, empty. The same couch Reyes had seen, the same table, the same untouched surfaces. The hallway stretching into darkness exactly where it had been. Nothing moved, nothing shifted, nothing reacted. One of the investigators leaned back slightly, arms folded. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's just run it." And they did, at normal speed. Minutes passed, then more. The image didn't change, no flicker, no shadow movement, no compression glitches that could be mistaken for motion, just a fixed perspective of an empty space. 10 minutes in, one of them sighed softly. "Probably homeowner security setup," he said. "Left running." The other didn't respond, just kept watching. 20 minutes, 30, nothing. No one entered the frame, no one exited. The hallway remained dark, but not unusually so. It behaved like any unlit space would, absorbing light, holding its shape. At the 40-minute mark, they skipped ahead. Then again, then further. An hour, 2, 3, nothing. The footage held steady, consistent, unremarkable. Eventually, it became routine. The kind of footage you don't really watch anymore. You just let it play while your attention drifts, waiting for something to justify the time spent on it. But nothing did. One investigator stood, stretching slightly. "That's clean," he said. "No activity." The other nodded, already noting it down. No movement, no subjects, no anomalies. It was labeled accordingly. Clear, stored, filed. Just another empty recording from an empty house. And for a while, that was the end of it. Because the footage didn't demand a second look. It didn't raise questions. It didn't leave anything unresolved. It simply confirmed what everyone already believed. There was nothing there. Until someone decided to look again. Not because they had to, not because of protocol, but because something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't the content. It was the absence of content, the way the camera never adjusted, the way the frame never shifted, the way the silence inside the video felt too complete. So they pulled it back up. Same file, same timestamp, same empty room. But this time, they didn't watch it like observers. They watched it like they expected something to be hiding. And that changed everything. They didn't find it by accident. They found it because they slowed everything down. Not out of necessity, but out of discomfort. The kind that doesn't explain itself, but refuses to go away. The footage restarted. Same opening frame, same empty room. But this time it moved differently. Frame by frame, each second stretched. Each motion, if there had been any, would have been impossible to miss. The cursor dragged slowly across the timeline, advancing, pausing, advancing again. Nothing changed. The couch stayed still. The table didn't shift. No light flickered. No shadow crossed. Everything held exactly the same position it had in real time. Perfectly consistent. Almost too consistent. One investigator leaned closer to the screen. "Focus the hallway," he said quietly. The other adjusted the zoom. The image sharpened slightly, though the far end of the hallway remained obscured by darkness. Still, clear enough to confirm nothing was there. Frame by frame. They moved forward, each increment revealing the same result. Nothing, 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 and then something. It didn't announce itself, didn't move, didn't emerge. It was simply present for a single frame, and then gone. They didn't react immediately, because at first it didn't register. Their brains processed it like noise, a visual artifact. A compression error, something explainable, something ignorable. But one of them stopped the playback. Wait, he dragged the timeline back. Just slightly. Then forward again. Frame. 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 There. Again. He froze it. Neither of them spoke for a moment, because what they were looking at wasn't clear, not fully formed, not detailed enough to define. But it was not the hallway. It interrupted it, occupied it, changed it. At the far end, where the darkness should have been uninterrupted, there was a shape, subtle, distorted, almost blending into the shadows, but not entirely, like something caught between visibility and absence. Is that... The second investigator started. He didn't finish, because neither of them had a word for it. It wasn't a person, not clearly, not fully, but it held a presence, a suggestion of form. A vertical interruption where there should have been none. They advanced the frame. Gone. They went back. There. Forward. Gone. At normal speed. It didn't exist. It passed too quickly, too cleanly, too precisely. But slowed down, examined, isolated, it was undeniable. Something had been there. For exactly one frame. No transition in, no transition out. Just presence and absence. Glitch, one of them said, though his voice lacked conviction. The other shook his head slowly. No distortion in the surrounding frames, he said. No data corruption. Everything else is stable. Silence filled the room, because that left only one possibility. The frame wasn't broken. It was accurate, which meant whatever appeared in it had been there. They leaned back slightly, not in fear, not yet, but in recognition. Because something subtle had just shifted. Up until that moment, the footage had been empty, safe, explainable. Now, it wasn't. And worse, they both understood the same thing at the same time. That frame didn't just show something, it proved something. Because if it appeared once, then it could appear again. And if it existed within the footage, then it had existed inside the house, in that hallway, in that exact position, at a moment neither officer had seen. And the most unsettling part wasn't what it looked like. It was how easy it would have been to miss. Because now that they'd seen it, really seen it, they couldn't go back to not knowing. And the empty hallway didn't feel empty anymore. They didn't notice it at first, not because it wasn't there, but because it didn't behave like sound normally behaves. It didn't announce itself. It didn't spike. It didn't demand attention. It simply existed underneath everything else. At first playback speed, the audio from the camera seemed exactly like the video had suggested. Empty. No voices, no footsteps, no movement, just the faint electronic hum of a recording device in a quiet room. One of the investigators leaned back. "Nothing on audio either," he said. "We're wasting time." But the other didn't close the file. Not yet. Because something about nothing didn't feel complete. "Run enhancement," he said. A pause. Then the audio expanded, not louder but deeper, layered, like pulling back fabric that had been covering something hidden underneath. At first it still sounded like nothing had changed. The same silence, the same empty room. Then a shift, barely noticeable, a rhythm beneath the static. Not mechanical, not environmental, something inconsistent, irregular, human, but not cleanly so. The investigator leaned forward slightly. "Do you hear that?" They both paused, focused, stripping away everything except the lowest frequencies. And that's when it became clear. Breathing. But not singular, not centralized. More than one source. Overlapping, misaligned. One inhalation slightly delayed from another. One exhale cutting across the next. Like multiple people standing too close together in complete darkness, trying not to move in sync. But it wasn't just that. The pattern didn't stabilize. It drifted, shifted, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, sometimes almost disappearing entirely, only to return again beneath the noise floor. The investigator muted the interface slightly, then re-enabled only the lowest frequency band. The sound sharpened, and with it, so did the discomfort. Because the breathing wasn't coming from the room in the recording, it didn't match spatial placement. It didn't behave like ambient audio. It wasn't reacting to distance or direction. It was layered beneath the environment itself. Like it wasn't in the room, but in the recording of the room. The investigator swallowed slightly. "That's not possible," he muttered. But he didn't stop listening. They synchronized everything next. Camera footage, body cam recordings, dispatch logs, all aligned to the same timestamp, same entry point, same moment of arrival. At least that was the assumption. They ran the playback side by side, 2 screens, 2 perspectives, same house, same night, same team. At first, everything matched perfectly. The patrol vehicle arrives, doors open, officers step out, Reyes first, Patel right behind him. But then, the synchronization began to drift. Not in timing, in sequence, in identity. On the left screen, the camera footage showed Reyes entering the house first, stepping over the threshold, clearing the entryway. On the right screen, something impossible. Patel was already inside, standing still, not moving, not speaking, just facing the hallway, completely motionless, as if he had been there the entire time. One of the investigators stopped the playback, rewound it, played it again. Same result. Reyes enters, and Patel is already inside. "That's a timing error," one of them said quickly. Too quickly, but the other didn't respond immediately, because timing errors don't insert a person into a locked environment. They don't relocate someone across 2 independent recordings, and they don't change physical entry order without explanation. They ran it again, frame by frame, slow, careful. Reyes approaches the door. Reyes enters, and Patel is already there, standing in the hallway, looking forward, as if he had been waiting. But the body cam from Patel himself told a different story. He was outside, 1 step behind Reyes, door still open, still crossing the threshold, still entering for the first time. 2 realities, 1 event, both recorded, both authentic, and both completely incompatible. The room went quiet, not from disbelief, but from recognition that something fundamental had stopped aligning. Time wasn't just inconsistent anymore. It was contradictory. They returned to the hallway footage, because everything kept pointing back to it. Same structure, same framing, same darkness at the far end where visibility broke down completely. On both recordings, the hallway looked identical, lighting stable, depth unchanged, no visible movement, no obvious distortion. But now, they knew better than to trust what obvious meant. They slowed the footage again, zoomed, focused. At first, nothing. Then, a shift. Not in the environment, in perception. At the far end of the hallway, something appeared again. The same presence as before. But this time, it didn't stay still. It moved, not forward, not backward, sideways, a subtle adjustment, almost imperceptible, like it was correcting its position relative to the camera, as if it understood where it was being observed from. One of the investigators leaned in. "There," he said. Patel's voice came through the body cam recording. "Did you see that?" Reyes didn't respond, not because he didn't hear him, but because in his version of the footage, nothing moved. No shape, No adjustment, just darkness. Two perspectives, same hallway, different realities, and only one of them was seeing more. Then, the footage reset, not manually, not by command. It simply returned. Back to the beginning. Same timestamp structure, same entry sequence, same opening moments. The officers arrive again, step out again, approach the house again. But something was different. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Reyes hesitated earlier, just a fraction longer before stepping forward. Patel paused differently at the door, a breath delayed, a glance held too long. They were repeating the same actions, but not identically. Each iteration introduced deviation, small, accumulating. One investigator leaned forward. "This is looping." They replayed it again and again, each cycle slightly altered. Patel spoke earlier in one. Reyes delayed response in another. Their coordination degraded across repetitions, like a recording being overwritten imperfectly. And then, beneath the audio layer, a voice, barely audible, cutting through the distortion like something trying to reach the surface. "You're not the first." The sentence broke. Static swallowed the rest. The loop continued. A new file appeared in the directory. No one created it. No system logged its origin. It simply existed, time-stamped, earlier than the first recorded entry, before arrival, before dispatch, before the camera was even active. They opened it. There was no video, only audio. Two voices, recognizable. Reyes, Patel, but wrong, distorted. Compressed in a way that made them feel slightly displaced from themselves. Reyes spoke first. "We didn't come here yet." A pause. Then Patel. "It knows that." Silence followed. Not empty silence, weighted silence, like the recording itself was waiting for them to respond. One investigator leaned back slowly. "That's impossible," he said. But his voice didn't carry conviction, because impossible things were already stacking up too neatly to ignore. One final discovery came from reviewing reflections. Not the hallway, not the camera feed, but incidental surfaces inside the room. Glass, metal, anything that could distort perspective slightly. They paused on a single frame, a reflection in a darkened surface behind the camera setup. At first, nothing. Then, a figure, standing in the room. Not in the hallway, not outside, inside. Behind the recording device, still, watching. The investigators froze the image, zoomed. The figure's head tilted slightly, almost observant, almost curious. Then one of them noticed something that made the room feel colder than it had any right to be. The tilt matched Patel's movement pattern. Not exactly, but close enough to be recognizable, like imitation, delayed imitation, as if it had learned from him, after seeing him move. Not before. The case was sealed, archived, filed under unresolved anomalies. No official classification change, no further investigation authorized. The footage was stored, the files locked, and for a time, nothing happened. Then someone checked the system again. Routine audit, standard review. The camera feed reopened. The room appeared normal, empty, still, silent, exactly as before. Then, the timestamp flickered, resetting itself. 2:11 a.m., the beginning of the loop. But something had changed. The hallway was no longer the focus. The camera angle was slightly different, closer, lower, more deliberate. And in the center of the frame was the figure, no longer in the hallway, no longer distant, already inside the room, standing directly in front of the camera, perfectly still, looking straight into it, not hiding, not moving, just watching. And this time, it didn't fade, it didn't glitch, it didn't reset. It stayed, as if it had finally learned how to remain. If you're still here, you already get it. This isn't just a story. Most people miss what actually matters. Subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next. The next case changes everything.